Welcome everyone to the first episode of the SEN Nutrition Podcast for 2022. Peter and I are back. How are you, Peter?
Bryan, there's a bit of ring rust in the microphone, so we better get some anti-rust to get all those cobwebs out.
It's taken us till February to start recording. Well, January was a bit of a hectic time here, and everyone knows about the environment that Australia faced with COVID, and we decided to just delay the start of this season for the podcast. And this year we've got planned out really a lot of special guests coming on board to tell their story and to tell their SEN story especially. But also we're here to provide motivation for all horse owners to feed better, even train better, but also that overall horse management, and just get thinking about trying to improve that nutrient profile of your horse and ways to help improve their quality of life. And that brings us to this topic for summer, which is pretty fitting, and it's the salt versus electrolyte question. So what is the difference? Does my horse need an electrolyte? And it's really common, particularly through summer, that a horse will sweat. And then the horse owners that we find who are asking the questions are a little bit confused. What do they feed first? So Peter will go through just a basic example of what we should be looking for when you're supplementing salt, and then also electrolyte.
Yeah, Bryan, so it's a very common question. People always go, well, look, I'm feeding salt, I don't need an electrolyte, or I'm feeding an electrolyte on the days that I work my horse and I don't need a salt. The short answer is you need both. And it's a pretty big misconception. So how we'll try to explain it is just to put it into layman's terms so everyone can sort of get the gist of it. And salt pretty much should be fed every day, and always provide horses access to salt either in a loose lick or in their feed. Personally, for me and Bryan, we prefer it to put it into the feed because you know that they're actually going to eat it. If you just have a lick there, it's like us, like licking a salt block. Eventually, our tongue's going to get really sore and it might, jar up sort of, or even crack and bleed. So the same thing would happen for a horse. So we prefer it to put the salt into the feed because you know how much they're going to be getting, if they're leaving some of the feed or if they're leaving some of the salt. So it's easier to get that 10 grams per 100 kilograms of body weight. On the contrary to that, in terms of electrolytes, it's as needed. So basically, feed horse an electrolyte after intense work, stress, or when they're obviously sweating pretty heavily, and that might be summertime, it might be wintertime. So the biggest difference is salt is every day, electrolytes is as needed. So what we like to recommend is that if you're a thoroughbred trainer, it might be on a Tuesday and a Saturday where you're doing sort of short, sharp work. For an endurance horse, that might be 3 or 4 days a week where they're going an hour plus. So that might be every day, but it all depends on obviously on your horse, on the discipline, what work you're doing, and the duration of the work itself as well. Yeah,
with salt being the base, it really complements the rest of the diet because your hay is high in potassium. So the major electrolytes are sodium, potassium, chloride, bicarbonate, and then you've also got lower levels of calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus. And these levels are lost through sweat at an even amount. But when a horse is not sweating, the base diet plus salt will easily cover that amount. So you're not substituting potassium, where we see this a lot with trainers, especially when you add salt, which is this sodium and chloride, that really complements the rest of the diet. And then you're not wasting money on electrolyte on top of that unless your horse is in work.
Yeah, that's well said, Bryan. And the second point, as I like to make on the salt side, is that it triggers thirst. So obviously we know that the hydration is very important. And I've given this example obviously before where we need the sodium chloride to push the water inside the cell to hydrate the horse. If we don't have the sodium chloride in the diet, the water just stays around the cell and doesn't obviously fully hydrate the horse. So it's very important that salt is given daily. It does trigger the thirst, it regulates the fluid and obviously helps the horse to stay hydrated. In terms of the electrolytes, it rapidly restores fluid, plasma, and electrolyte balances. So the electrolyte that we've got at SEN is obviously specifically designed to replace what's lost in sweat. It is sugar-free, it's filler-free, fully dissolves in water. So it is very practical, and it's only a 25-gram feed rate as well.
Yeah, it's really excellent and used widely through Australia by top-performing trainers and stables. And when you look at a horse, the low levels of sweating, they lose around 10 grams of sodium per hour. But then also when they're in heavy work or or that can even increase to 40 grams per hour. And getting that base feed rate of salt is important. So we work around 5 to 10 grams per 100 kgs of body weight. And this is all approximate. This is all looking at the horse as a whole. So you know the signs of dehydration, look at how they sweat and how much demand there would be, and then tailor it to your horse, the amount that you're going to give. So we recommend feeding the base amount of salt per day. Then you have that low feed rate of electrolyte after exercise. And then if required, you can feed another lot of electrolyte at night if the weather is humid or the horse is indicating this from all your dehydration tests.
Yeah, Bryan, that's well said. So I've got a bit of a geeky analysis here of what actually are equine electrolytes. And this is based on a Scientific American journal entry. So basically, what the explanation is that electrolytes are chemicals that, when dissolved in water, produce ions with an electrical charge. Hence why it's an electrolyte.
Wow.
Nice pun.
Pete,
I've been doing my research,
that's very
Bryan.
good.
There you go. So yeah, electrolytes. So these ions have either a positive or a negative electrical charge, which is why we refer to them as electrolytes. So in a world of nutrition, we use the word electrolyte, more specifically to refer to the minerals dissolved in a body fluids, creating electrically charged ions. So it's very important for the whole function of the body.
Yeah, and especially important for performance horses. So if you are not hydrating your horse properly with sufficient amounts of electrolytes, these performance issues, muscular weakness, deranged neurological function, impaired intestinal function, you're more prone to colic, diarrhea, kidney disease, and the list does go on and on. So it's one of those first boxes to tick if you're a performance horse trainer, or you got horses just in work and they're sweating. And even if you're not in that sort of top elite bracket, all horses that are sweating need that replacement.
Bryan, I think a good example to use would be a car battery. You know, you've got your little plus sign and you've got your little, minus sign. It's exactly the same for a horse. So with the electrolytes, obviously, you've got positively charged ions, negatively charged ions. And for that battery to function at optimum level when you're trying to start your car in the morning, you need those electrolytes for the horse to be basically at the top level, so that horse functions the same as a proper car battery.
Yeah, that's well explained, Peter. So when you're looking for an electrolyte supplement, that Sen Complete Electrolyte that we have provides this in really good ratios. We've got the trace minerals there as well, so that's immediate effect. So it has that immediate effect when fed to the horse.
We also use chelated minerals, Bryan, so we don't use any of those synthetics. They're fully chelated, and I think from memory, our one is the only one on the market that does fully dissolve in water. So if you did just want to put a scoop into water, you could do that. Make sure you've got two separate buckets, one bucket with clear water, and then you've got the other bucket with the electrolytes. You can dissolve it in water and obviously give it to your horse as well. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that we're the only one on the market that has got one that sort of acts like Gatorade almost.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's really well received through every performance industry. And when you look at the whole Sen feed program, it complements this. We're going down that no sugar, no filler way. We want a pure product that's effective, and it's proven time after time to really help that hydration levels and tick that box, especially in the climates in Queensland. Horses that come up from Victoria or those southern states really have a tough time adjusting, and we do have a lot of trainers in North Queensland that really especially have to look at that, and they trust the Sen products to keep them hydrated.
One step more, Bryan, onto the performance side. So electrolytes are essential mineral that play a vital role basically in the fluid retention, as we said, to keep the water inside the cell, nerve conduction, muscle contraction, even digestion. So electrolytes basically, they're involved in a whole bodily function.
Yeah, and one other thing is when a horse has sufficient access to hay and pasture, in that fact, they have generous amounts of potassium. So when you're looking at supplementing any electrolyte, if you supplement salt first, which has sodium and chloride, with the hay, then you're hitting those levels right. And then when all this is lost through sweat, and that sweat rate can be different per horse, so we just have to work through that on a specific basis, you can get away with just supplementing salt as the base and then looking at electrolyte levels after.
So Bryan, a horse that's exercised heavily can lose up to 16 litres of sweat, which contains approximately 30 teaspoons of body salts.
Yeah, wow. And if not replaced, you will see those signs of dehydration.
And the signs will be fatigue, decreased performance. Obviously, with dehydration, you do run a risk of the horse collapsing, and obviously, a few worse things than that as well.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the most severe conditions that we see that we're hearing a lot more of, and it's a little bit alarming, is a condition known as the THUMPS. So the THUMPS, it's like a human with hiccups, but it's more alarming. So it's where the diaphragm of the horse, it spasms out of control. So it's twitching of the flanks that mirror the heartbeat. And then through these hiccups, it causes a number of things happening with the horse. And it's all due to the electrolyte imbalance and insufficient supplementation of electrolytes. So when that diaphragm flutters, it's really observed in the fatigued horses most notably, and they sweat profusely after that prolonged exercise, and then there's convulsions and extreme thumping noises produced, and it's quite alarming. And where you see this most commonly occur is when there is a body-wide electrolyte imbalance. It's easily rectified by providing sufficient amounts of electrolyte on a daily basis to a performance horse and getting it through a really well-balanced product like the Sen Complete Electrolyte. But also looking at the whole diet, there's been reports that horses that are fed diets high in calcium, such as lucerne, so maybe not enough grassy hay in those stables, they're more prone to developing the THUMPS. And this is more prone in endurance competition, but also that excess calcium in the body, it affects the mobilization of existing calcium. So it can't counteract the losses during the exercise. And then this has an impact on the nerve control of that diaphragm. So when looking at your whole diet, it's not just the electrolytes for this condition, it's also those calcium levels and that need to be balanced with the phosphorus. And as Peter and I know, there's a lot of stables that feed too much lucerne, and that protein level and calcium level needs to be looked at.
Great point, Brian. I think a lot of people are obviously focused on, protein, high quality protein, let's feed more lucerne. Valid point you make about the calcium. They don't look at the calcium. And to be honest with you, a lot of clients that I've spoken to over the phone, the ones that are feeding too much protein, the horses are dehydrated. Obviously, the urine's like white, sort of aioli, and that's a sign of dehydration / too much protein in the diet. So it's really easy to pick. I've given this example before. I know most people don't stand around watching their horse urinate, but if you do catch one and you do see that the urine's dark yellow, sort of aioli, you really got to look at the protein intake. Back onto the THUMPS, I did have a first-hand experience probably late last year. I was at track work with one of our trainers that we closely work with, and funny enough, the horse did end up getting the THUMPS while I was there, and we didn't know what it was. It was crazy. Obviously, the vets were running in. They were treating for a heart murmur initially, so they thought it might have been some sort of a reaction to a heart murmur. Look, no one knew what was going on. It was pretty scary because I think the heart rate was about 150, 160.
It's also a very good horse too.
Oh yeah, a very, very, very good horse. It's always the good ones that normally have the problems. But yeah, so it was pretty scary. And even obviously towards the afternoon, it had come down a little bit, but they gave it some drugs obviously to bring the heart rate down. And I just said, look, I personally think it's something to do with salt and electrolytes, because before that happened, I was just going through and sort of looking, and one of the horses across from where I was standing, I saw it urinate and it was really yellow, and I just thought, oh geez, that's not a good sign. And it's funny that all this happened on the same day. So long story short, I asked the trainer to take bloods, which they did. Obviously the results came back the next day, and I just I had a gut feel that it was going to be electrolyte imbalance. And funny enough, the bloods came back with the pathologist obviously making comments, electrolyte imbalance, please top up with electrolytes. So look, there might have been something else going on there, but that horse was dehydrated. You don't want to get to a position where it's got the THUMPS, and then obviously you're running around like a madman to try to work out what it is. So urine is a prime example. Obviously Brian's mentioned the different signs as well, and it's very cheap to supply salt and very cheap to feed an electrolyte, a lot cheaper than vet bills, and if you do go past that point, it can be very dangerous to your horse.
Yeah, 100%. Peter, that treatment of the THUMPS, it is purely electrolyte replacement. If it's severe, they might have to give some more calcium on top at that point in time. But overall, the diet high in calcium, it's advisable to get it to look at the levels, try and decrease it to a better level, or even just a few days before the competition, because this will stimulate the horse's normal calcium balancing act inside. So homeostasis is the science word. And when you look at your electrolyte supplementation, each horse is different, the way they absorb sweat, and it's all down to horse management in the end and knowing your horse. But basically the point is not shortcutting salt and electrolytes in a performance horse setting, because you can run into unnecessary setbacks, and particularly a horse going through a preparation for its end goal, you want to tick every box and then only use the vet intervention if it's an acute issue.
I think through that issue, obviously, I spoke to the to the stable sort of staff and obviously the person that's doing the feeds, and we did work out that the horse are only getting like 10 or 15 grams of salt, and the electrolytes were only given on I think once a week through a paste as well. So like that's just not enough, and that horse obviously is an example that it's not enough. So look, things happen for a reason, and we managed to get it rectified pretty quickly. Look, there hasn't been hasn't happened again. So I think they've got everything sort of sorted where it needs to be. But it's very easy, and the work that horse did, like it was a fast day, but the horse didn't really go that fast. So imagine if that happened in a race.
Yeah, and when you look at those levels, it's probably 4 times short of its sodium and chloride requirements, because a 600 kg thoroughbred requires at least that 60 grams of salt per day on top of its feed. And yes, the whole other feed consistency of the diet has sodium chloride and potassium, but it's not enough because there's other more vital trace minerals and vitamins in there. So salt is cheap. We don't want to pack a pellet full of salt just to offset that electrolyte level. But when you look at it, especially in this climate, this current climate of summer, it is so important.
Yeah, 100%, Bryan. I'll give a few tips on when to feed an electrolyte on top of salt, obviously, as well. So, before and after exercise, when it's a really, really hot day, and look, we're in the middle of summer now, depending where you are in Australia, obviously, anything above 30 degrees, even humid sort of up north as well. I would almost do it every day, like if you're up sort of Townsville, Cairns way, before and after competition. So many people are good at after competition, but remember too, don't let the horse get dehydrated before an event, especially if you got to travel for like 10 hours. That horse is going to be sweating, standing in that float for a long time. So if you don't prepare, and what I mean, obviously maybe give the electrolyte 3 or 4 days before travel. Once you arrive, maintain it, and then obviously throughout the competition and after the competition. But don't forget the before. I think a lot of people don't do it before, and then by the time they get to compete, the horse is dehydrated and it's too late. When you see your horse sweating excessively, that's normally a telltale sign, which is easy to pick up. Extreme conditions, even in a winter time. So it is summertime, but don't forget you still need the salt, you still need the electrolyte after intense work in a winter time because they still sweat. The first sign of colic, obviously, don't let it get to that point, or even when you see loose manure or even diarrhea. So that might be another telltale sign that your horse might be in dehydration.
And Pete, there's another condition is when your horse doesn't sweat. And that can be even more alarming as well. And these non-sweaters, they're referred to, or the scientific term is anhidrosis. And we do get questions about this, particularly through summer. My horse is not sweating. What is causing this? And there's actually no exact science behind it. So also in that fact, there's no proven therapy. Every horse is different. They're going to respond differently to different supplements and medications aimed at this. And a lot of the advice coming out is the horse is not coping with this heat or the hotter climates, and they need to be moved to a cooler climate because they're not sweating. And the sweat is there to help the horse not overheat, and it can be really performance limiting, and then that puts the horse at risk of severe heat stroke, and it's not ideal. But what we've looked at is if you tick all your electrolyte levels in the diet, give the horse every chance, and it's still not sweating, there's other things that we have looked into that may help horses with this condition. So this could be a little plug for our new product that was released late last year. So it was the Sen NO3 Boost. So what they found is a study that was performed in the UK. It showed that by blocking the nitric oxide production during exercise caused anhidrosis, and it elevated the body temperature. So what this means is if you can promote nitric oxide production, it could have the opposite effect. And this is what we do for trainers that have got this suspected non-sweater. We try the natural way, all those natural supplements, before trying to go down that veterinary management or even moving the horse to a cooler climate, because you want to keep them in this performance.
And the same will go, Brian, for horses that are imported into Australia, say from Europe or, even sort of, North America, obviously, where they do get different climates. So it does go both ways, I think. And I've had the pleasure to work with a couple of horses imported from Germany, and you could tell that some of them, obviously, when they come initially, they find it hard to settle into, even Southeast Queensland weather, and, they'll be used to probably pasture that's a lot more nutritious to what pasture here is in Australia. Obviously, they'll be used to different minus temperatures, not maybe, sort of 10 or 15. So it's a valid point. You got to look at the horse. You got to look at where it's come from, any underlying issues that the horse has. But salt and electrolytes, it's a very easy thing to manage, but we find that it is a big thing that people don't manage, or they just think, oh, look, I'm giving a little bit of salt and it should be fine. But it's not as easy as that.
No, 100% right, Peter. And going back to the anhidrosis, it could even just be a genetic flaw where there's not enough delivery of sweat to the skin surface for some unknown reason. And there's even further studies that need to be done on this. But if you do have a horse that's a non-sweater, we just have to really look into it and treat each one as an individual.
I think a good thing to do, Brian, is to just follow that checklist that you just said. Try to tick off every box. Try the natural way. Obviously, if you've ticked every box and it's still not sweating, you might have to go down that pharmaceutical route to manage the condition. So, don't just sort of give up as soon as you see it. Go through the protocol. Get in touch with us. We've dealt with a few horses, obviously, that have had that issue. Look, some we've managed to help, some we haven't. And as Brian said, sometimes it does just fall back to on genetics.
Yeah, 100%, Peter. So that about wraps this one up. And in a nutshell, feed salt daily, feed electrolytes when in work or when in sweating. And if you can keep to that rule of thumb, you're going to help increase the performance of your horse. And
if you are feeding another electrolyte, just look at the sugar content. Make sure that sugar or a carrier is not the first ingredient. And that's not to bag any other products, but a lot of products do use sugars and carriers. So you're feeding 60 grams, but out of that 60 grams, you might have 20 grams of minerals, and you got 40 grams of carriers. But what we've done is we've just put pure product, make the feed rate as least as possible, which is 25 grams, and it does fully dissolve in water as well. So we've just gone the other direction. So if you're not feeding ours and you have got another one, just look through the ingredients and look at the feed rate, compare it to others on the market, and just make sure that you're not giving it a big spoon of sugar.
Yeah. So with our products, you're in complete control what you're delivering to the horse, and then you can manage the response from there.
I think that covers it up, Brian. I think we got the ring rust out. We're ready for this year. Hit it with a bang.
Yeah. And when we look through even our social media and everything, we just like to thank everyone for the support, even throughout Christmas and in January as well. Over that holiday period, there's a hive of activity, and I keep repeating myself with that Sen users group. It's really refreshing to see everyone promoting and showing their Sen results and asking questions if they need further advice. But you can always call the Sen HQ. Our phone is always manned during business hours, and we're really happy to help you just reach some goals, reach some more understanding through nutrition for your horse, and trying to improve their overall health and that nutrient profile.
And I think, look, we're here to educate and just obviously share the latest research that we come across and obviously explain it so everyone can understand it. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but we just want to, the information that we come across, we just want to share it with everyone.
Yeah, and that is even showing through the lupin pellet. So the Sen lupin pellet has been a really great success in terms of another fiber source for a horse. If you've been on beet pulp or copra before, many trainers are switching to the Sen lupin pellet due to the profile, the nutrient profile, the really high fiber levels compared to those other two. But most importantly, it's Australian made and available all the time. So you're not switching in and out. You don't need to soak it for as long. And it really complements many high-performance diets that we see.
Well, Brian, I'm hearing beef pulp at around $55, $60 a bag for an imported product, and that's if you can get it as well.
Yeah, it's
a no-brainer to switch to the loop and pellet.
Yeah, you really got to see what you're paying for that, and it must be a lot of container clearances at customs.
Yeah, well, we've got the solution. We got ample supply, locally made product, double the fiber, double the protein, really good amino acids in lupins as well. So it ticks too many boxes.
Yeah, no, too right. And we will be back with you with another podcast very soon. We've got some really exciting interviews coming up, and we'd like to thank Guy McLean for his really emotional testimonial. You'll probably see a video going around Facebook, and yeah, we're really touched. And he's back over in America. He's seen his horses for it's nearly 2 years since he saw his horses, and that just gives us goosebumps every time. So yeah, it's really good to connect with like-minded people in the industry that want to put the horse first, and we want to get the best out of them and give them a fruitful life.
Yeah, it's our pleasure to be associated with Guy and Emily, and obviously we look forward to working closely together with them in the future as well.
Yep. So we'll be back next week, and we will keep these weekly again and after our little hiatus. And yeah, we look forward to connecting with you guys again. And if you've got any questions, just send them in, give us a call. We're really happy to help. So yeah, we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.